Nuclear power generation is the hottest topic for public policy debate in Korea these days. So the question is, should we, Korea, close down all the nuclear power generators for good or not? That's what we want to talk about right here in this program, Upfront.
President Moon Jae-in's anti-nuclear energy policies are causing major controversies. Recently, the government has halted the construction of 2 nuclear reactors, Shin-gori 5 and 6, and launched a special committee tasked with collecting public opinion to decide the fate of the 2 reactors. The new administration's nuclear-free initiative began in earnest in June when Gori 1, Korea's oldest operating commercial reactor unit, was permanently taken offline.
2017년 6월 19일 0시 대한민국은 국내 최초의 고리 원전 1호기를 영구 정지했습니다.
At a ceremony proclaiming Gori 1's retirement, President Moon said he would scrap all plans to build new nuclear plants and express his commitment to bolstering the clean energy industry. Anti-nuclear policies were also among the key items in the 5-year policy roadmap the Moon administration unveiled recently. But President Moon's move toward a nuclear-free country has generated a heated debate. Supporters argue that nuclear energy poses more risks than benefits, while critics claim it remains a key source of power, accounting for 30% of the country's total electricity supply.
처음에는 좀 걱정을 했는데 정부에서는 요금 인상은 없다고 했으니까 믿어봐야죠.
전기세 요금 인상은 지금 우리나라가 이 한여름인데 전기에 남아돈다고 하지 않습니까? 이런 거를 볼 때도 전혀 그 상관관계는 없다고 생각하고요.
원전을 대신할 수 있는 그런 대체 에너지가 나오기 전까지는 뭐 지금 상황보다 전기 요금이 인상하는 거는 당연하다고 저는 생각하고 있습니다. 네.
원전 반대는 절대 해서는 안 되는 사항입니다. 전기가 얼마나 중요한데 지금 전기가 남아돈다. 그게 임시방편으로 남는 거지 결코 남는 게 아니에요.
아무래도 원자력발전소가 없어진다면 요금이 인상되지 않을까 생각하고 있습니다.
원자력 발전이 전력 공급에 많은 부분을 차지하고 있기 때문에 만약 탈원전이 된다면 전기료 인상은 불가피하지 않을까 생각이 됩니다.
The public is divided on a range of issues, from a potential hike in electricity prices and alternative energy sources to whether resume or permanently dismantle the construction of the Shin-gori 5 and 6 nuclear reactors. Advanced economies, including the US, France, and Germany, are increasingly going nuclear-free. In the aftermath of the Fukushima and Chernobyl nuclear disasters, these countries are phasing out their nuclear power fleet, shifting gears to greener and safer energy alternatives. Currently, there are 446 nuclear reactors in operation worldwide. Korea ranks 6th in the number of reactors with 24. On this week's Upfront, we examine different positions on the government's nuclear-free initiative and discuss where Korea's energy policy should be headed in the years ahead.
For today's discussion, we have 2 prominent experts in studio today. Professor Suh Kune-yull, he's a professor of nuclear engineering at Seoul National University, joining us right here. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And also we have Professor Yun Sun-jin. She is a professor at the Graduate School of Environmental Studies at the Seoul National University as well. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
I'm really excited about today's discussion here. We have 2 prominent experts coming from 2 completely different perspectives, I hope. And so let's talk about it one by one. First of all, the cost of the power generation based on nuclear energy. That has been a big topic of debate. Different people have different numbers as a whole. And the supporters of the nuclear power generation say, look, this is the most economical means of producing energy. As I said, there are different numbers. But Professor Yun, from your perspective, from the perspective of a little bit skeptical about this view, what would you say about this cost aspect of nuclear power generation?
When you talk about cost, the important stuff is what kind of component we have there and how much is reflected in that cost. That is important. In our case, compared with other countries, especially in other OECD countries, Korea's nuclear generation cost is very low. It is around half of average.
Is it because Korea's technology level is superior? We can keep the cost down?
Maybe it can be one component, but it is not the whole story. Because, you know, recently we use levelized cost of electricity.
Okay.
It means it covers all costs from construction to disposal.
Okay.
But in our case, maybe construction cost and the fuel cost and operation cost are included. And some cost for spent fuel disposal and decommissioning are also included. But there are some hidden costs too, or even though we have cost for spent fuel disposal and decommissioning, is it enough to deal with those? That is the problem. So in our case, that's not sufficient enough. That's the problem. So nowadays, levelized cost of nuclear power is reported by many countries and many institutes. According to the report published by US government and UK government, the levelized cost of nuclear power is much higher than renewable energy, such as wind power and solar PV.
That's a debatable point. Let's talk about that. But before we move on to the nuclear, the renewable energy here, Professor, so from the perspective of this, long-time expert in this area, even though you're not an economist, you don't really deal with the number of the costs here, but as someone who have been dealing with this issue, Korea says, as Professor Yun has maintained, last year, for instance, the Energy Policy Research Institute announced that nuclear power generation in Korea per kilowatt cost is 68 won, as opposed to coal, which is 74 won. So nuclear energy is cheaper than coal, which is very interesting perspective here. And in comparison with the renewables, renewable energy is like almost 3 times more costly than nuclear energy. So according to this research institute's perspective, nuclear energy is the cheapest. And to what extent is it true that Korea's method of calculation is different from other countries?
Well, it's $1 million question because it's really tricky to answer. First of all, actually, nuclear power was supposed to be too cheap to meter. It was destroyed back in 1950s, not so fast. Actually, it was failing, and probably nuclear power was a victim of mistaken identity. But anyway, when she was talking about the cost of generation, and also I have to make a little fix because it's supposed to be Korean won per kilowatt hour. What's kilowatt hour? We're talking about, say, 100 watt bulbs. It costs 68 Korean won
That's
to light 10 of them for 1 hour. That's cheap. It's almost a little too cheap. Why is it so? Because it's pretty hard to calculate the generation cost per country because it really depends. First of all, why so expensive? Maybe 1/2, maybe even less than 1/2. The other countries is mostly because a little bit of subsidy, government subsidy, but mostly very reduced construction cost.
Any response to that?
Yeah, I think he's right. And as I mentioned, the cost we reflect is very short. So we should include more and more. And another stuff is why our construction period is shorter than others. That is another question we need to raise.
We hurry much?
Yeah. So, we need to think about the finance too. In our case, the nuclear power is operated by Korea Hydro and Nuclear Corporation. It is a public corporation, and the government always guarantees the finance. So even though they have a loan from outside, the interest rates are very low because of government guarantee. But other countries, especially recently Westinghouse and Areva, they were bankrupt because of financing. Yeah, because if their construction period is lengthened, in that case, they should pay for more for interest. And if we have some problem, all costs should be paid by taxpayer. That is another issue. And we need to think about the insurance fee too. In our case, insurance fee is very low because the government guarantee.
Okay.
So, but you know, if we have some accident, I hope we do not have it.
Right.
But just in case we can have, in
Right.
that case, that damage can be compensated by taxpayer because of government guarantee. And that guarantee can lower the insurance fee. So if we pay the corporation pay for higher insurance fee, in that case, the cost of nuclear power
Right.
will go up.
It's a very important new point that I just learned. Thank you very much for that. For the interest of time, we have to move on to related topics here on this. What will, if as President Moon Jae-in has announced, if Korea has a willingness to close down or reduce nuclear power generation, what will replace it? Obvious alternative is, as President said, renewable, maybe, perhaps, and more intermediate term, perhaps gas generation and so on. Professor Suh, as an expert in this field, if we reduce our reliance on nuclear energy, what do you see happening ahead of us in terms of finding alternatives?
Maybe midterm first, maybe
please.
5 years, because of his administration, for example.
Right.
So the idea will be to be replacing with renewables, but it may take time because the technology and also the site availability is not quite good enough as far as our countries.
Right.
We're in different situations than in Germany.
We don't have like...
we don't have deserts and land area, no.
Right.
So basically we're talking about creating about 5 times the Seoul metropolitan area if we are going to replace the whole fleet of nuclear power plants with solar. It's a pretty troubling story. If we are going to go with wind turbines, then we might need to create 14 another Seoul metropolitan areas, flood area. So that's pretty hard, but there are some alternatives. Maybe we can be utilizing the parking lots, roofs, walls, and even offshore, maybe oceans and seas. But that's another story. But so, as far as I'm concerned, the government is going to try to fill in the gap with natural gas first, because that's sort of a fast food type of thing that we would really need in coming years.
But that's expensive.
Pretty much. So that's the point that Japan was in a situation like this 6 years ago, and they were really trying to stay away from nuclear. They just shut down almost 50 of the nuclear power plants, and then just a couple of them remaining. So what did they do? They chose to import a lot of LNG from elsewhere. And
their trade balance went into red.
Just into red for the first time in history, almost.
Exactly.
And they're still in red. So that literally means that we might be following the same track. So I just thought about importing the LNG, for example. It might cost probably $10 billion a year. So that literally means that we have to be exporting $200 more billion to compensate for that loss. So it's not that easy. But anyway, that's coming. So as far as I'm concerned, LNG is going to do the sort of fire extinguisher job in the beginning, and then renewables will be coming in year after year.
We are talking about phasing out nuclear power, but it takes a long time. So we should not compare with the Japan case, because Japan, after Fukushima accident, all reactors were shut down. But our case is not the same. We still use the nuclear power plant. So, the time frame is around 60 years. We had many reserve ratio. It was over 24%. We have many power plants. They are not working now. So, we do not say about some abrupt maybe stopping of all nuclear power plants.
What I'm saying is that it's not just nuclear, but also coal is being shut down. If you think about it, then
because
they have to
air
be
quality,
exporting, actually importing. There's no way around. And I'm not talking about abrupt change, but we're talking about 5-year plan. Maybe that's okay. Maybe the government may try to even suppress the electricity bill a little bit. Actually, that has happened because last month it was reported that the government is actually sending some warnings that factories not going to spend too much electricity in anticipation of this peak period.
Right, right.
And if that turns out to be the case,
isn't there a way to
there's a
save
warning
energy?
to save energy,
Oh,
for
right,
example.
right.
And so that peak was below the supply. But then again, if we think about the fourth industrial generation, is
Right.
artificial intelligence, big data,
Right.
it's just a monster electricity consumers. Electric cars, did they have these in mind?
Right.
Maybe not. Then again, we might be in deep trouble.
Renewable energy cost is decreasing now very rapidly. So when we have some time to take, in that case, we will have a more reduced cost for renewable energy. But you know, some researchers calculate some electricity price if we replace nuclear power with the other energy option. But they just calculate the current price. So we need to calculate the future anticipated prices. So in that case, it is deeply decreased.
A lot of people are saying nuclear energy also, the technology will improve over time and things will be made much safer than now. So we have to have a long-term view rather than keeping it up now. On that point, what would you say?
You know, the nuclear technology has been developed over 50 years. So, and during that time, government subsidized a lot. But in case of renewable energy, its history is not much long. It is very short. But within the maybe past 10 years, its price went very deeply down. And I'm talking about not just the long-term price decrease. It is just 2022. Yeah. Based on US report and UK report. In that case, renewable energy is 1/2, or nuclear power is 1.5 times higher than renewable energy. That is their projection. So I think even though we are very accustomed to the past lifestyle or past energy option, we need to think about the future. Future should be different or maybe different from the past. I think when we think about our children and our future generation, we need to have a future perspective, not the past.
Professor Suh, you need to share with us the safety of nuclear power generation. How is it improving?
According to the history of the operating nuclear power plants, there has been probably 600 plants, 600 of them, 30
around
years
the
around the world, across the globe. So that means that there have been 6 major big severe accidents.
6 out of 600, okay.
Exactly, because 3 Mile Island,
Right.
2,
Chernobyl,
and then
Fukushima.
Fukushima was 4 of them.
I see.
6.
Right.
So that literally means that
That's
it's
all? Fukushima, 4, and then Chernobyl and 3 Mile?
Yeah, that's about it. Actually, there's some other instances, but I'm not counting on them, basically just big ones. So think about it, the reactor use year was 18,000 years total, 600 times 30. So if divide 6 by that one, it means once in 3,000 years.
Right.
So if we think about our situation, 30 nuclear power plants possibly, and then 60 years operation, that means we have 1,800 years. So that means not even once, but that can happen. So that's the story about the numbers, but the real story is that
story is
we
about
are
the
feeling
past.
that, I know.
How safe is it in the
Past,
future?
exactly.
Right.
Looking into the future, actually she said nuclear has been old enough, but actually that literally means that it was not being challenged. So it's just taking it easy. Now it's time to wake up.
Real
We got a wake-up call from the outside, from the renewables. So we have to be improving a lot. There are a lot of rooms for improvement. Small modular reactor is one of them, and then that means the cost will go down, and then safety will be. But then again, there's another one. Not just generation cost, but the availability of sites. Even now, the citizens, residents are opposing to have that solar farm in their background. Why? Because of thermal island, all this pollution. So actually, in the interest of environment protection, they are trying to hurt the environment by
you're saying
putting
basically
in
nuclear
artificial
power
solar
and the
cells,
renewables, they all have same kind of site
Exactly.
problem.
It's not just a generation cost.
But why
How
is
cheap
nuclear
is it?
better
then who is going to place them?
I see.
That's where it is. The actual nuclear power plants would need just bare minimum, but this requires whole land area. That's where it really breaks down. It's just not just a matter of generation cost, but also how to place them.
We need to think about the reduction of our electricity demand. In case of electricity, over half, around 55% of our electricity generated is consumed by industrial sector. So even our residential sector's consumption and commercial sector's consumption is not much. In case of Denmark and Germany, they pay for electricity tax. It is around half of electricity price. So our electricity price is cheaper because we do not pay for electricity tax, and there is no electricity fuel tax on nuclear power. That is problem. But anyway, so cutting shaving the electricity demand is very important. And then parallelly, we need to expand the use of renewables. And he said about land requires, but it is not just empty land we need to use. We have many buildings and rooftops, and as he mentioned, many parking lots. So in case of Tesla, they are inventing very nice rooftop material, and it means the buildings can be power plants. We are talking about the fourth industrial revolution period. So it means we have a very nice small smart grid and some very nice ICT technology. So we need to utilize those technology to reduce the loss of electricity.
Germany is one major country that still continue on. What do you see in Germany in terms of the way they deal with this plan? I heard one thing, that German nuclear engineers are continuously working hard to improve their nuclear power generation technology while they have this plan to phase out.
Germany is paying a whole fortune to really pay for this Energiewende, which means energy transition from the fossil and nuclear to renewables. But don't forget, they're still burning a lot of coal. Don't forget that. They're different, and also because of higher electricity. Actually, German people are paying a lot. It's just probably the second highest electricity bill in the whole Europe because of all this. But then again, I am thinking about their factories going out of the country because they cannot afford to pay for this bill. So the same thing will be happening in Korea. Many IT companies, major worldwide ones, residing here may be choosing to go over to Russia, to China, and we're going to do the same. Engineers, I've known a lot of them, actually lots and lots of them. They've done their job. They are beginning to move somewhere else. They're sort of jobless. They are working on partly decommissioning, but it's pretty limited, and it's not pretty much high-tech. It's different. It's not even blue ocean. It's just mostly construction and deconstruction work. So we're not really expecting many qualified engineers to be working in that area if this nuke-free Korea is being realized.
Professor Yun, are you saying despite all the prospect of technological demand for the future, nuclear power generation will remain forever dangerous enough for us to give it up? Is that your point?
Yeah, I think fundamentally those technologies are very dangerous. Those are three big accidents. That accident says us those technology cannot be controlled by human being. And even though those technology is very nice, advanced, but human error can be involved at any time.
So it will remain forever dangerous.
Yes.
Very briefly, Professor Suh, counterpoint about the future of nuclear safety. Will it remain forever dangerous like that?
I don't think so, because we can make it better, safer. Why not? Because it's
But
time.
It will have to be 100% safe.
I know. Nothing is really perfect under the sun, that's for sure. Boeing, jumbo jets, they're falling down. Are we going to give it up? No, we have to make it safer and then use it.
Okay.
That's the strategy.
We should not compare. We should not compare the accident raised by nuclear power and raised by flight, because the time range and the space range is very different. With one nuclear accident, those areas, land areas, cannot be used for over hundreds and thousands. that time can go and the space cannot be used. So we cannot compare with car accident or flight accident.
I see.
No.
I see. I wish we could have another hour to continue with this discussion. This is one of the most interesting discussions we have had recently. I want to give you big thanks, big time for having this great debate today. Thank you very much.
Glad to be here.
Thank you.
I'm sure our viewers might have felt the same. Very interesting debate. I'm sure you have learned a lot. So likewise, when we have important topics to discuss here that affects Korea as well as the world, we want to ask you to join us once again. Until then, this has been Kim Byung-ju. Thank you very much.